Hello there, I'm Greg Watson, and what we're going to do in this series of videos is give you an introduction to the idea of continual improvement. This is awareness level training. It's meant for people who are just beginning their journey. It's going to be followed by a more in-depth introduction to continual improvement, which is particularly dedicated to managers and executives in the program. So this first topic, or the first series of videos, is about the basics of improving work as a quest for improvement. And so what I'd like to do is just to begin by introducing this first module, which is understanding the nature of continual improvement. Now there's 4 modules that we're going to have here. This is the first of these. Then we'll talk about learning to work together in connected processes, discovering management's role in value addition, and then learning to chase answers in the data. So first, work is action with an intent to produce something of value. If we're not producing something of value, it's not work. And so this is raising several follow-up questions. So what are the necessary actions that qualify as work? What are the things that we do that will actually say that this is work as compared to this is not work, such as this is play? What does the intention, or how does intention relate to planning? Are they really the same? If you intend to do something, is that the same as a plan? So good intentions may not actually equal a plan. And so we want to plan to do something. And we talk about what is the outcome of a deliverable, or the something that's been done. So what are we trying to accomplish? What is the outcome of this plan? And what is the process of production by which this object of value is delivered? So we're going to see that the object of value is related to a product or a service that we're delivering, whereas the way or the means by which we deliver it is the process by which we deliver that. And then the questions we need to ask ourselves throughout this process. How do we know? By what means can we objectively judge what the situation is and how well we're doing in the progress of creating work? Now, we want to begin with a comment by Dr. Joseph Juran. He said, without a standard, there can be no improvement. And we see that all work follows the same basic process. And we call this in Gemba 1, the process of performing routine work. And in here, we see workers have 2 jobs. Number 1, to do the work that produces the value. And the second job that they have is to improve the quality of the process by which they work, so they eliminate waste in that system. So we'll see things like work standards coming out, worker training, self-inspection. And we'll measure then the quality of the inputs we get. We'll measure the quality of the flow through the work process. We'll measure the output quality. We'll also be concerned about worker safety, as well as the cost of the transactions that are happening in this process. So this is what we call the SDCA cycle, Standardized Do Check Act, or it's daily management is another way of referring to it. It's the routine work that we do in our organization. Now, the content of our work changes with the different levels in the organization. At the very base of this triangle is the workplace. And at the first level of that organization, we are having people doing tangible work. In other words, they are moving parts, they are packaging products, they are testing products, they are selling products, they are designing products. All of that is tangible work to create something that can be then sold at the next level, the service component. Now, the service component is mostly intangible. It's process activities that people are doing to be able to have a deliverable that goes to the market. And it creates then the satisfaction of a contract with a customer. The customer wants something, we provide it at a certain cost and certain quality level, certain quantity, and that is then what we call the commercial exchange. Now we see that all businesses actually are in both the service component and deliverables component. However, manufacturing businesses are also in the job of the product component development and production processes that go with it. And so manufacturers including more tangible aspects of production operations, but they also include all of the things that are in a service business. Therefore, if we're to generalize about work, we can say that all businesses, no matter whether manufacturing or typically a full service business, they all have a service business at heart. They are all working on doing something on behalf of a customer and delivering that to them in the marketplace to some requirement. Now, so all businesses have the same ingredients. There are customers, deliverables to markets, and there are the dimensions of the workplace where we are actually conducting these activities. Now, the nature of work changes, and we see that it's changing across 3 different levels in the organization. There's the operational work level. This is the manual and administrative acts that create and deliver outputs like products and services. The second is the system level work. These are cooperative acts where people are working together across functions, and they're coordinating activities to assure smooth flow and integration of work. And this allows the business to operate consistently and maintain the flow of inputs into outputs and deliver to customers. Then there's organization-wide work. And these are mental activities that develop the business model. They operate the culture by which work is accomplished. It provides strategic directions in terms of the vision, where we're going, the strategic plans, the resource allocations that help to get us there. And these will guide the organization to achieve its common objectives. And we call these 3-level Gemba. Okay, that's a Japanese term. And when Aristotle talked about excellence back in 300 BC, he said excellence is the result of a habit. It's doing routine work, standard work, in the best possible way, consistently over time. And what we want to do in improvement is scrutinize how well is that work being accomplished. Now, the word Gemba actually comes from 2 kanji characters. Now, kanji characters actually tell stories. And so when we take a look at the kanji characters for Gemba, the very core brushstrokes from these characters from the Chinese told the story of 4 things. There's a survey, there's a detailed scrutiny or examination being conducted. It's being done by the king. It's an executive function, in other words, in the kingdom. It's happening at sunset, which is the end of a working period. And where did it happen? At the point where the real work was being done. And what did the king see? He understood the real thing, and it required his personal activity to notice. You know what the king saw? A pigsty. He saw the mess. He saw the waste. He saw all of the things going wrong in the organization. And he then had to ask the people the question, why are we having such a mess? How do we make sense out of this mess and the dirt that we see in this process? Now, this is fundamental to understanding change. And when we see how management implements change, we see that in Gemba 1, we're dealing with this tangible level of the organization. We call this continual improvement. Standardize, do, check, act. And the check step is a pause or reflection to say, did the do step actually produce value, or did it produce waste? If it produced value, we don't go then on to the act stage. We go back to do. We have do, check, and that becomes the sequence of work. But once we check the process and find out it's not working, we have to act to adjust the process and then re-standardize it before we go on. Gemba 2 is the level that occurs in the business function. And here what we see is this is breakthrough types of projects. These are major changes happening sponsored by management and typically resourced by management. And they may be doing things like putting new software in place. They may be putting a new business process in place. It may be developing a new market or creating a new product. And these are things that change the way of doing work in the past. These go beyond the routine work that we're doing. And this is what we're going to see is the plan, do, check, act cycle. Now, transformation is one level higher. This is where we're fundamentally going to change the nature of the existence of this organization. And in transformation, we might be changing the culture. We might be changing the organizational structure, like a merger or acquisition. We might be doing something as radical as bringing totally new technology into the company or new IT systems. So these 3 levels are happening at different paces, in different cadences or beats. And what we see when we're looking from the outside of the organization, we can't tell, is the change from continual improvement in daily management? Is it coming from a breakthrough project, or is it coming from an initiative that is strategic and is meant to be a transformation project? To the outside, it all appears as continuous improvement. So this is the collective activities that the organization is using to manage change across all of its levels. Now, we take a look at this together. We see Dr. Duran also made the comment, all change happens one project at a time and in no other way. And so project management is what's advancing us in this breakthrough. So what we see in this graphic is that we have the SDCA cycle, and we see also then the 5 S's that are so-called the process of lean. It's not really quite correct to say that, but we see that the do check cycle, which is happening for the value addition process, is Siri Sitan, and that means get everything ready, be ready to do the work, follow the plan. Sisu is to clean up after you've done the work and get ready to do it again. Seketsu is basically a process that has the same meaning as Kaizen. It's make improvements for the better. When we see things that we can do within our budget, within our decision rights, those are improvements that can be made by a lean team in the SDCA cycle. And it doesn't require management approval. And then after they've done that, then they go to the standardized step, which is called Shitsuke. And Shitsuke actually is meaning to teach and motivate the workers on what they have to do. And that's all a part of standardization. Now, at the check step, we see if we can't fix the process, we need to do something different. Then we initiate a project. And this is the one project changes. These are green belt projects or black belt projects in a Six Sigma environment. Maybe it's a lean improvement project that is beyond the scope of a manager. But these types of changes may require additional budget. They may require resources of outside groups like IT, or maybe even some consultant or external people to help in that process. Maybe it requires engineering change or purchase of equipment. So in this type of cycle here, what we're doing is we're managing the work breakthrough projects. And this is where we get into the project management process. And those PDCA processes in Lean Six Sigma, we call them DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, control for problem solving, or DMADV, define, measure, analyze, design, and verify for the reconstruction or redesign of a product or a process. And so here what we see in this Gemba 2 is we're adding this job of facilitating change teams, leading analysis. So there is somebody acting as a coach mentor to the people from Gemba 1 to actually do these projects. And the controls are we review the work, we identify the waste, the team takes the action, and then we have a work balance and across the workers so that nobody's doing more than they should be. There has to be some consistency in the assignment of work and also productivity from the flow. So we see that in each of these levels of the organization, quality competence changes. At Gemba 1, it's a worker-doer. They have several basic proficiencies. They're individual contributors that are developing the value-adding work. They're also team members for local improvement projects, and they're responsible for conducting the work tasks and the control and improvement of those tasks. At Gemba 2, we see the supervisor/facilitator, and their basic proficiencies are that they are individual contributors as the work process coach. So when there's an improvement project, they act as the coach. They act as the guide to move that team through to make the improvement happen. They're also a team member on cross-functional process flow projects. And they're responsible for operations and flow and improvement within their area of responsibility. Gemba 3 is the leader/owner. And this is the proficiencies that are required of the executive team. So they are individual contributors as business system improvement coaches. This is where we have to improve the business. They're team members on either breakthrough or transformation projects, and they might be the actual sponsor or leader of those projects. and they're responsible for design of the strategy and its implementation, as well as transformation of the organization over a period of time. Now, what we see in this is that in Japanese companies, there is a statement that says, Kenichi Gambutsu. It means go and see for yourself, or go to the source. It's an encouragement to the management team, whether you're middle management or senior management. It requires gathering facts relevant to gain a full understanding of the situation that's occurring in the Gemba. And so remember, the king went to the Gemba to conduct a survey, and what he saw was a pigsty. Now, in the Japanese, there are 5 G's, which are the first letter in the Romaji words. So go to the real place, that's the Gemba, that's where the situation observed. See the real thing, that's Gembutsu, what actually occurred, see the experience. Discover the real facts, analyze all the data, see what's really behind the observation that you have. Find the real reason, this is the principal root cause, Genri, and establish real control, Gensoku, which means returning the project to the SOP, or its standard operating procedure. Now, note that the character Gen is the same in all 5 of those words. But the first 3, it's one character, and the last 2, it's a different character. And this is signaling a very subtle shift in the meaning of this real. In the first 3, the character means reality or consciousness, as opposed to a dream. And so you want to see what is the real thing, not an imaginary understanding, not a guess. And then we see that this is describing the experience of when you go to the Gemba, what you're looking for. And then this is the process activity, if you will, of doing what we call a Gemba walk. The 4th and 5th Gen mean original or formal, and this is the desired outcome from the work that happens after a Gemba walk. Find the real reason. What is the real outcome that you'd like to have? What was the real thing? What can we actually get our hands on to fix? And then finally, how do we return the process back to what it was at its former self? And that's what Gensoku is. Get it back to a state of control, which was the ideal way we designed the process to operate. So this is a call, if you will, for action. Go find the sources of waste. Understand what needs to be done. And this job is a job that happens at the individual level, at the middle level, by the supervisors, as well as at the executive level. And when we look at this, we see there's really 3 generic categories of waste that they're looking at. Now, in Japanese, there is this way to express negation, or no. So the first is ai, which means no, but it's used in casual conversation. Do you want to go to the park? I.e. Do you want more broccoli? I.e. The second word is mu, and this defines a specific rule or a commandment, as in thou shalt not, like the 10 commandments Moses brought to the Jewish nation. And if we take a look at in muri, it means that there is an impossible situation, that the reason does not fit this situation. And the final is dame. And you have to pronounce it this way because it's a forceful term. It's used to scold someone. So you say their work is not good, or you're providing a warning, like to a grandchild who is getting into a potentially hazardous situation, dame. Now, these 3 rules are applied throughout organizations about the need to establish how we eliminate waste. And they're interpreted as a duty. The duty of these 3 rules is thou shalt not. So the first one is thou shalt not make bad decisions. Now, this applies to the workers, it applies to the supervisory level or the administrative level, and it applies to the executive or the governance level. And then mura, thou shalt not produce bad flows. That definitely applies to the workers, but it also applies across the business, and it also applies at the executive level. And then muda, thou shalt not make waste from poor work discipline. That applies at all 3 levels. However, in one observation that I made the comment when I was lecturing in Japan, executive mori, so the mistakes that are made at the executive level from bad decisions. Say we spend more than we need to, or we buy equipment that's not necessary. It creates workplace level mura. And that creates workplace muda. So we have the business mura, and that creates workplace muda at the worker level, and the workers cannot eliminate it by continuous improvement. Why? Because the executive team has set the circumstance that makes it impossible for them to act. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, as we examine our work processes, the things that we're doing, how do we create waste in our work processes? What are those things that we do that are leading us astray, if you will, from having properly operating processes, being able to deliver value, full value, to the customers for the products or services that we're giving them? Thank you for your attention. We'll come back to the second video in just a moment.